Welcome to this week's edition of Break the Bank right here on Bleacher Brothers. I'm Jeff DeForest, joined by the great Mike Jones. Always great having Mike on any show that we're doing, and especially here when we're trying to break the bank. Although we didn't do a great job of it, we kind of made a little crack in the piggy bank and then fell backwards a little bit last week. Although both of us were on the Cristobal factor and the University of Miami taking the points with SMU. I don't know that we had the guts. I don't know that we had the chutzpah to go ahead and take SMU straight up on the money line. But nonetheless, that turned out to be a very profitable play if you were inclined to do so. And once again, Mario Cristobal supposedly assembling all this great talent. Nick Saban just a couple of weeks prior was saying before they lost to Louisville, I think they're the best team in the country. Way to go, Nick. Is Nick recommending any gambling sites? Is he selling any picks? Because he may be the worst handicapper that we've ever seen. Anyway, that was an interesting development last week, and we had the first week of the brackets coming out for the college football playoff. And needless to say, after losing 2 out of 3 to unranked teams, your Miami Hurricanes nowhere to be seen on that list. They're more likely to be on the list on a Clockwork Orange than they are to be on the college football playoff list. Michael, we had so much transpire. Last weekend was just absolutely fantastic. And I know you and I were both immersed in the World Series, the baseball competition between the Toronto Blue Jays and the Los Angeles Dodgers. How many times did we give up on one team or the other in that series?
Well, every day was a different play for me. It was just like, what's happening? Game one, you get Toronto that blows them out in game one. You're thinking, wow, the Dodgers have no pen. What are they going to do? Then they get the gem from Yamamoto. They tie it up, head out to an unforgettable game three, an 18-inning game where Dodgers go 29 innings with only 4 scored runs. So you think they're done at 3-2. They go back to Toronto, basically steal a game when Barker gets caught off second on a chance of with second and third, nobody out in the ninth inning, down up a run and get a win. And then sure enough, you get the game 7, which was an epic game. I mean, it's going to go down the annals of history as one of the great games. And you're flipping. I've always been a college football guy, so you're flipping back and forth between the games, and then you find yourself just glued into this World Series, each inning, each play. Rojas, the home run, and then Muncy hitting the home run. Then, Will Smith just living on, dying on the long ball. And it seemed like the Dodgers did, and get another gem of 3 innings from Yamamoto. It's just incredible series. And really the factor that I think really we should look at is in the future is look at Yamamoto pitching game 6, 96 pitches, and then comes out in game 7, throws, a spotless 3 innings. I mean, got a little bit of banged up a little bit in the double play ball by that Kirk grounded into it, which was, I'm sitting there thinking, no infield in at this point. They're just going to play it out, and then they get to exactly what they were looking for after the intentional walk. It's just amazing baseball. Not the best well-played series, I would say, overall, as far as fundamentals and what you're looking at, but as far as excitement, you cannot take anything away for what both teams have. Riveting.
Great drama also all the way through, and it was edge of your seat type of stuff. I don't know about the 18-inning game; that was more edge of your pillow type of stuff. But I happened to tune in as the game was being concluded after missing about 6 innings, and I wake up and I'm looking at the screen, going, "They're still playing, or am I watching Sports Center?" I'm not exactly sure, but did a nice job of reviving interest in Major League Baseball. I think maybe even expanding the horizons to where some people that otherwise would not be inclined to think that baseball was the most exciting of sports. I actually realized how entertaining it could be and how compelling it could be. So that was a big plus for Major League Baseball. It was the most watched World Series in a long time. And, of course, the comparisons were being made. Shohei Ohtani, who looked like a cinch at one point to win the MVP. If the Blue Jays won, you thought it was going to be Vladimir Guerrero. And I remember thinking from a betting standpoint, I think we mentioned this on one of our shows, that Yamamoto, I believe, was 13-1 to be the series MVP prior to his second start, because everybody was convinced it was either going to be Shohei Ohtani if the Dodgers won, or Guerrero, deservingly so, if the Blue Jays were able to prevail. And I thought to myself, I should take a shot at this. Of course, it was one of those ones where your thinking is pristine, but you whiff on the actual execution, because I didn't bet any money on it. But I was thinking, if he wins the second game and somehow the Blue Jays don't prevail, why wouldn't he be given consideration? This was before he even came in and got the save in Game 7, but I would have thought, Ohtani actually got tagged with a loss in the series. He wasn't as impactful, even though he had a monster game throughout the series. He wasn't as consistent. And then Yamamoto comes out there and closes out Game 7, and you thought, all right, he's going to get it, and you would have been handed a handsome bag of money at 13-1 if you'd taken a shot on him, because the other two guys were really prohibitive odds. So there are a lot of ways to make money there, and as always in any kind of gambling endeavor, Mike, and you know this as well as anybody, as well as I do, and all the people connected with Bleacher Brothers and all of our fans and viewers. There are a lot of ways to lose money as well, and we're going to try and help you avoid that today.
Yeah.
We don't have Frank G. This guy's on a busman's holiday, the likes of which you could only dream about. He goes out to San Diego for the Breeders' Cup, which also had some very compelling and sensational action, great betting opportunities. There was a pick 5 in the Breeders' Cup on the first day, on the Friday. They only had 5 Breeders' Cup races. So the pick 5 encompassed all of those races. The first 3 were not that easy to figure. Well, actually, the third one was, but with 2 stone favorites winning to close out the series, I guess it was the fourth and the fifth leg were cold favorites won.
Wow.
You had a $9,000 50-cent payoff. With I think the highest price might have been a $40 horse, but had three bombs come in. They weren't excessive. They weren't impossible to figure. And that's where you get, I mean, unbelievable value. Any of these type of days in thoroughbred racing, whether it's the Kentucky Derby, to a lesser extent, the Preakness, the Belmont, less horses involved. Excuse me, but nursing a very bad cold here, so I might be choking to death. But yeah, you get tremendous value. That for that to pay $9,000 for 50 cents, what was just absolutely incredible. All right, we're going to have our usual format with our 3 collective games and then a couple of election selections on our own, and see if we can't put together a 5-pack of ball games for you this week. A lot of other stuff though on the horizon, and we'll get into some of it because you have early college basketball. You are a guy that's waiting for him to drop the puck every night in the NHL. You're not afraid to send it in on that. And then another subject I just wanted to touch on before we get into our games of the week here on Break the Bank. And we talk about this a lot, Mike, you and I have, and I'm sure the entire gambling world is talking about it. And that is preserving the legitimacy, the idea that these games are all on the level. We had another incident now in another sport where in UFC, there was allegedly a fixed fight that's now being investigated. A guy named Isaac Dulgarian is minus 250 to win his match. And then the odds mysteriously drop shortly before the match took place, before they stepped into the cage, from minus 250 on Dulgarian to minus 150. Dulgarian had been quoted as saying that if people are going to bet on him, he deserves to have a cut of the action, which may be a scathing indictment against what happened because he taps out without really appearing to be in the kind of jeopardy that you usually see these guys execute a tap out on. Taps out in the first round and loses as a minus 150 post-time favorite, minus 250 prior to that. And there are many entities, the bigger entities, are refunding money that was bet on Dulgarian because of the fact that it involved suspicious betting patterns, which they do have an overseer checking into these sort of things like they do in tennis and so many other sports. And this looked really fishy, but how I mean, it's crazy to think. I mean, usually, and this is kind of a disgusting reference, but if you walk into the kitchen and you turn the lights on and you see one roach crawling around, and then somehow you manage to, and with me, it's a battle. I don't know about you, but the first time I encountered the state bird of Florida, the flying palmetto bug, I hit this thing with a sledgehammer, and it looks at me and laughs. I threw like a broken piece of glass at it, whacked it right in the neck, and it's still flying around. Eventually, I emptied a fire extinguisher on it, and it was still going. Now, you can't kill these things. But the point being, usually if you see one of these bugs, there's more. And I think that's kind of the parallel that you have where you're looking at some of the illegitimate things that are going on with the NBA now involved in investigations. They've already suspended a guy for life, Jonte Porter. Then the Terry Rozier thing surfaced again. Chauncey Billups, in kind of a different front with the illegal and the sort of espionage involved poker games, and now you have it in MMA. And I'm thinking, how widespread do you believe this is? I mean, what kind of epidemic are we looking at here?
Well, go back to the controversies with Dana White and paying his fighters. There was always a big thing that the ownership made all the money and the fighters were getting underpaid. So this was coming out prior to the legalization of gambling. So, there's going to be some guys that are going to probably be a little upset at their low level fighters that are probably on the main card trying to move up in the world and have lifestyles or do things that are different. And this is part of the age, especially in a one-on-one match. I mean, we know with tennis changed. With now, if you default, it becomes a no bet. With that prevented tennis from going through those injuries back in the early 2000s. I know they changed the format of gambling. I mean, yeah, it's a serious thing, and especially now that someone might go to prison or something for this, and it's really kind of something that they, even though they have control over, it's like, why? I just, they know better. I mean, we knew back in '84 that gambling was an absolute no. I mean, that was all over the locker room boards. You can't gamble. You can't gamble. I knew that the referees all had to have $2 million in assets to be a NFL referee back then, so they wouldn't be bought off or someone could try the official. So there was always a credential to get involved and do at these high level events. And I just look at it like, I don't think we've seen the end of it, and it's sad, but it's like for a better, it's frustrating. You're losing. There's all different ways to bet now, more and more each day. You go in a bet, you see 150 props, you see half times and live and everything like that. So they're pulling you in and you think you got something. The eye test works for you and then really doesn't. And then all of a sudden you get on a bet that you think is okay as a favorite, a guy thinks is going to win, and the next thing you know, your bet is either being reimbursed, but you're finding out a year later that, or time later, that there's some investigation going on that holds it. But guys get hurt in this game and probably go out there and fight. There's knowledge for that. I know a group that bets these fights and is very successful, moves lines considerably. That you can't even. I would get these fights well after the line I'm supposed to bet them at, and if you don't bet them at the lines that they're betting at, you don't win because the lines move and they win and lose fights, and it's sometimes 100 points, and it's really tough. But when you see that, there's knowledgeable people out there who understand the fight game and know how people are training, and we don't know that as a regular better, and they do, and so you got to figure the inside information in the fight game. MMA has got to be even more transparent and clear than even a football team that's got 45 guys or a baseball team that's got 9. It's like it's harder to do that when it's one-on-one. It's easy. So I don't know what
a million ways to get screwed, especially if the judges are involved.
Yep.
We know that. Look, we're all aware of the French judge in the Olympic Games in Salt Lake City when the Protopopovs or whoever they were falling all over each other, and somehow she put up a 10 and screwed some deserving medal winner out of the victory and probably aced out some bettors. I remember bet a fight a long time ago. Julio Cesar Chavez was being featured a lot in Las Vegas, and they were sending radio stations out there for these boxing radio rows because they were trying anything they could with Tyson in prison. Don King was to promote these fights with Chavez. So Chavez is fighting a guy named Frankie Randall, who had a pretty impressive record, but was not anywhere nearly as well known. You might have been out in Vegas at this time.
Yep.
And we were watching Frankie Randall in the gym. He's icing guys. Julio Cesar Chavez looks like he's not even training. He looks like Roberto Duran or Ricky Hatton, may rest in peace, between fights. He's ballooned up to like 190. And we're thinking, this guy's not even in shape. So sure enough, we catch Randall at 12-1, and he wins and gets the victory. And they have a rematch, and strangely, the odds are favoring Chavez after he had been literally, just destroyed by Frankie Randall in the first fight. We're thinking that's pretty weird. It's a good chance to cash again. Randall's doing the same thing, beating the living daylights out of this guy. This was the tail end of a 3-fight parlay that I was working on. Had some insight into the first 2, won the first 2. I'm thinking I'm going to cash a big ticket here, watching the action in the third fight. Sure enough, an accidental headbutt occurs in the 8th round. They stop the fight on the headbutt. They score that round, even though it was incomplete. And somehow Chavez ends up with the victory. And all of the great thinking and calculations you had made and all of the experience that you had applied goes completely up in smoke because of the travesty of the judging in that type of situation. And I guess it could occur in MMA, but in this case, the guy just taps out in the first round. Everybody's saying, well, what the hell happened there? And they had to suspend the payoffs on the fight because it clearly seemed to be very much, not on the level of what was taking place. And it's a problem. I think it's going to plague sports. You rarely see any more people post tickets all the time on social media.
Yeah.
And people around me showing you tickets on their phone. It's more annoying than even being at the track and the guy shows you he's losing tickets. You go, hey, you see that? I left out the 5. And now everybody has a phone. You could be at a party, whatever, having nothing to do with gambling. The guy sees you, go, hi, Mike, I know you're into gambling. Go, look at this. I had 11 out of 12.
Right.
And none of it has anything to do with who was going to win the game.
Yeah.
I'm watching a guy that used to chunk in hundreds of thousands. I mean, this guy put up some major tickets, and you were thinking, where is this guy getting the kind of money that he's betting? And let's hope he retains some of it before he goes to his grave. And now that guy has changed his strategy completely. Every ticket he posts is like 50 to win 3,000 on a 4
Right.
element parlay that doesn't involve anything about over unders or which side's going to win the game. It's all prop bets about
Yeah.
anytime touchdowns and things of that nature.
I got a text message a few months back, last year actually, January with the playoffs, that there was a text message of an article written in New York. I don't know if it's the Atlantic or something like that wrote it, but it was basically that DraftKings gave this woman a free play of like $10 for doing something, and she put a 15-team parlay in with basically player props for $10 that paid her 22,000. She got 14 of them right and got down to the last bet, which was Cooper Kupp to go over 71 yards against the Minnesota Vikings in the playoff game, and he caught one pass for 17 yards, and she lost. And they interviewed her, and she talked about the vision of $10 turning into 22,000 and the vacation she would have gone on. And everybody sent me this text, and as you know, I'm working on something that kind of leads to bigger payouts in a parlay type wager. And it just made me keep thinking that you're right, Jeff. This is what the people want now. Let's have it be legitimate, but they want $50 to win 3,000, and that's what people are looking for and paying. And I think that's the thing. I've also noticed, and if you look at these bets, some of the money lines are not as open as they were years ago. Like, you'd see a 5-point favorite now at 190 or 200, where they'd always be well over 230, 240. In other words, they're shading the underdog for the parlay type reduction, where they don't want to give out that big payout, or maybe not giving true odds, and basically shading the favorite for the first time, which notoriously is what people bet, hoping that they win. And last year we had a great little 3 weeks run where the favorites were 40-8 on the money line, where it didn't matter what you bet, you just bet $100 on a favorite, you're walking away with money. And it's like this is the new age of what they're doing. They're shading the underdog price because they're trying to attack the sharp, but yet leaving the public out there for the favorites. And we know favorites went 11-2 2 weeks ago. They went 5-9 this week with the Cardinals winning Monday night. How, I don't know. Thank God I fell asleep. I wasn't watching it because that gave me my 2-3 week. But it was, it's just you're looking at where things are headed and what's happening. And it's just like these are the kind of things that the gambling aspect is doing. And these companies are on top of it. So I really think, as MMA is the number 2 bet sport in our country, that this better get cleaned up quick, because if they start thinking that these MMA fights are fixed, look out. Remember, there's just one little group of people that run that whole thing with the fighters, that basically control all this, and we know I love Dana White. I met him once. I thought he was absolutely fantastic, respectful, great guy, but we know he plays a lot of blackjack, and we know he has a tendency to gamble. So I'm not saying anything other than he's a gambler, but here's where we're at with all this, that, how do we fix it? It's got to get fixed. That's what I'd say. To keep the ethics of the gambling involved, I think we have to figure out a way to correct this. And I'm glad that the operators are on top of it. I mean, with the lead on Terry Rozier came from DraftKings or FanDuel, one of the 2 big companies that led on to it. So I think that's the positives that, and Vegas was like that too. When they saw normal betting, we want it to be correct. We don't want, like, if someone's coming in and making a big bet, it's great to have it. But if it looks like something's weird with it, what's happening? Who is this guy? Where did he come up with the money? He's coming in with a bag of cash to bet, and understanding where it is. Because I can tell you this, there were times you couldn't get down what you wanted to get down, because if you went to a different book out there and they didn't know who I was, I couldn't make an automatic play. You'd have to be brought in by a host or set up this, and they watch everything manufacturers and what kind of credit line you have. And you couldn't even bring your credit line to sports. If you had a table game credit line, they weren't allowing you to take the chips over. That stopped around 2011, 12. They stopped a lot of it. So they're doing the best they can to control it, and I hope it maintains that ethnicity. We need ethics with all this.
Yeah, it's always nice to know that what you're betting on is actually on the level. Otherwise, you're betting on professional wrestling. All right, Frankie G, I mentioned he's on a busman's holiday, the likes of which you can only be envious of. He goes out to the Breeders' Cup at Del Mar that took place last Friday and Saturday. Great betting action, great display, wonderful series of races, a lot of heroic performances. And then he ends up staying in San Diego for the rest of the week. So congratulations to him. I hope he made a big
Good.
score out there. Either that or he had to get a job so he could get a plane ticket to come back. So he's not with us this week, but we're going to go back to our format of our three collective games here, and then a couple of freelance selections from both Mike and me, and we'll see how we turn out this week. Mike, you were saying 2 and 3 last week. I'm not exactly sure where I was at. Excuse me, last week because my head's been in a fog, but I do know that at least we hit that one game with the University of Miami, and I'm not sure how well it went the rest of the time. But
No.
and we had a consultant here to pick the games, the collective games, and that was one AJ Johnson, and he came up with one that I never would have taken a look at. It's of course a familiar outfit for the people that are Bleacher Brother fans because we carry the Owl Watch here on Bleacher Brothers, and has a lot of traction, a lot of subscribers, and a lot of people take a look at that. And FAU is involved in a game against Tulsa, so we're going to start there with our collective games. FAU laying 3 and a hook to Tulsa. FAU 3 and 5, Tulsa 2 and 6. What do you think, Mike Jones? What's going to happen here?
Well, I like being forced to look at a game that I probably wouldn't pick, which means I have a better shot than the games I study. So I'll take a run.
Exactly.
I'll take a run at this. So I think the number's -3. Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Three,
3. Okay.
3.5, I saw it.
So you got a home favorite -3. You got Tulsa coming down here to play in a little different humidity, different weather. I think it's their first. I can't remember Tulsa actually coming here yet, so this is kind of a new gig for them. Probably a recruiting spot trap, for them to come down here, maybe get a look at. People get to look at Tulsa as a Florida kid wants to go out to Oklahoma. I had a friend of mine's son who played there for a little bit, offensive lineman. So I paid attention to Tulsa over the time. Had a really good game and thought they were going to pull one off against Oak State earlier in the year. Had the game, and big upset that cost Mike Gundy his job. So the competitive. I like what FAU did last week, hanging in there with an undefeated Navy team. I just think, coming down here, playing in the humidity might be a little tough. I like FAU -3. I think both teams having a little trouble with injuries in the skill positions. I kind of like Florida Atlantic in this spot -3.
All right, home team and taking advantage of the home field and maybe whatever home fans they're able to generate there. I'm looking at some numbers here. They're pretty startling, and they all point in one direction. Tulsa 1 and 6 straight up their last 7, 1 and 7 straight up in their last 8 road games. So not particularly effective in terms of the straight up win. So the narrow point spread would suggest a lean towards FAU right there. FAU has gone over, though, in 11 of their last 15 games. And Tulsa is inclined also to hit the over. Now, the over-under number here is a rather robust 64 and a hook, I believe is the number. Yeah, big number, but neither team can play any defense. So if you're looking at it, both are vulnerable to the other team's strength in terms of their defensive lack of ability, I guess you would call it. And the over has been prevalent. FAU is over in 6 of their last 6 at home. And while they're not particularly effective against the point spread, they are very, very good at the total. So I'm going to go ahead and say, and last year they played. Now it's a different configuration, different quarterbacks, and a lot of other things and factors have gone into this game. But I'm going to say that this game goes over the spread. I mean, over the number. Last year it was the Owls 63, Tulsa 16, so they totaled 79 points, even though Tulsa was badly outclassed. And I'm going to go ahead. If I was going to pick a side, I'm with you. I'm going to go ahead and lay the points with FAU. I'm going to say that it's a high-scoring affair. So my recommendation on that game, FAU and Tulsa, over the number. Might be 64 and a hook. I think that's what I saw was the last number posted.
So we're going to take over 34 team total FAU. That's what we're looking at. So that's what we're going to go for. So if we're looking at a combined bet between the two of us, I would say the bet would be the over 34 on team total with FAU. That would be the bet that kind of looking at our minds, putting it together, staying with breaking the bank. Let's go, guys. Let's do
break
this. 34, see what you can get on it. Over 34 FAU team total.
Let's take a chainsaw and cut our way in like we were robbing jewels out of the Louvre here, Mike Jones. But yeah, all sign and that scares me a little bit when all signs point to the over, and you're looking at a fairly large number. 64 and a hook is no slouch number to cover, but
Yep.
it does appear that both of these teams are weak defensively, capable of putting up points. So, and as you said, for Tulsa, they have a lot of incentive to go ahead and put off or pull off a good effort because, yeah, they're looking at kids that may want to go out of town, and
Mm-hmm.
this is a red hot recruiting base. They're not going to get the primary guys. They're all going to bigger schools, but
Mm-hmm.
you could make a nice case for picking up some of the secondary pieces here in terms of recruiting availability, and good showcase for Tulsa. I think they're going to put on an offensive show, and they can run the ball. FAU can pass the ball against a weak passing defense with Tulsa. Total is over, and as you said, what is it, 34 and a half for FAU?
I think it'd be 34, be around that number. So we got to go. If we got to go over 35 is a number we're looking for. Five
All right.
touchdowns by FAU.
All right. If they win that game, they're going to have more than 35 points, and I believe that's going to be the case. So, as the mortal Gordon Soley would say, the great wrestling announcer, there you have it. So
That's
we're ready.
handicapping the handicappers. Basically, looking at both of us together, what we think, and then come up with something even more.
Yeah. In there, they've only played 4 times. FAU's 3-1 lifetime against Tulsa. They've averaged 44 points a game against Tulsa.
There you
So
go.
different
All right.
teams,
We're
different
in the
time.
ballpark.
Very small sample, but they score a lot of points against these guys.
Mhm.
So, all right, so that's mandatory game number one. The second one is also a college affair. This one a little tougher and motivational. You're big with motivational stuff. LSU and Alabama, both teams with a lot of incentive. LSU just surviving the embarrassment of the Brian Kelly tenure there. That didn't work out so well. They haven't been scoring points. Their offense has been abysmal at best. They're sitting there on the season, at 5-3, and they're getting 9.5 points in this game against Alabama, a team that's playing very highly ranked. They lost that opener against FSU. That was a bit of a shocker. FSU, I don't know how much that should diminish their resume because FSU has since fallen apart. But that being said, Alabama's come on strongly, has some real quality wins, including on the road against Georgia. What do you see? LSU and Alabama. Are you willing to take 9.5 with the
Okay,
Tigers?
so this is an interesting game. I dug into this one a little bit. I'm going to check right now if I can be distracted here real quick as I get on the numbers that I follow and see that one of the things that I saw was that the tickets right now are 85% on LSU, which to
Okay.
me is
I think that
is
number's
very
dropped too.
is interesting early. I mean, we're only Wednesday afternoon, so plenty of action to come. Probably maybe 20% of what is in is in. But I'm going to look down here and see that this game being a night game, in Bama. I see 10 right now. Okay, so 10's a number. But why is the line gone from 9.5 to 10? And the tickets are all on LSU. That tells me some sharp money likes Alabama. But
I
here's the
think it opened up
kick.
at 12.5. It might have
Oh, it
opened up.
did. Oh, okay. So it opened 12.5, dropped the 9.5, all right, back up to 10. So they just righted the ship. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's my thought on this game. I think it's a blessing now for the kids at LSU that Brian Kelly's out of there. I felt he was distracted the whole time. I feel like he's, tough on these players. I feel like he was distracted a lot in the offseason this year from things that I heard. I've heard that he was basically at some of the big decisions that were made around the football program. He was on the beach in Florida. So kind of very similar to Hugh Freeze out playing golf now. They're saying the report just came out that Auburn was very upset at the amount of golf Hugh Freeze was playing. So as we said, the best job is to be a fired football coach with these orchestrated firings. So I'm thinking maybe it's a sense of relief for LSU to get rid of Brian Kelly, and they're going to come out and play. Step one. Step two, rivalry games. We know Auburn is the big rivalry. We know LSU is a big rivalry here. Alabama's got games ahead of them. LSU's probably not going anywhere. But this is Alabama's LSU's rival. And I look at it like I think LSU comes up with a big effort under the new coaching staff and keeps it close and covers the 9.5. I just got a sneaky suspicion about this, a psychological effort. I just like the fact that they got rid of Brian Kelly. I think there's a lot of happy people down there. I know that the governor made some big statements about what they were going to try to do, so it got a little crazy. But getting that extra week off, both teams getting an extra week to prepare for this game, I kind of think that there's something here for LSU in this game that makes it interesting enough that I think they get keep it close.
And they got rid of Woodward too, the athletic
Yeah.
director. So
Mm-hmm.
he's gone. He had given more money away than Monty Hall. This guy. I mean, between Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M, and then Brian Kelly getting 50 some odd million to leave about halfway, not even halfway through his
But
contractual
but
obligation.
how about this? How about two great hires though? Right? I mean, when he's hiring him, everybody thinks, "Oh my, look
Everybody
at
loved
this."
it. Yeah.
I mean, everybody loved what he's done, what he does, and if he doesn't produce, that's it. So then he ends up hemorrhaging 130 million for these two guys. Hey, look, it's just it's a tough thing. We've talked about it in depth. Being a football coach, today's athletes are a little different. Now they're being paid, so they have a little bit more power, and they'll say something they might feel, oh, we know that Nick Saban left on the basis of having a tough time dealing with the athletes getting paid when it's more priority when the checks coming than it is to understand the campus and learn about the program and become a better athlete, student, all that stuff that Nick Saban wanted to do. So it's changing a little bit. So my change is this: let's take a run here with LSU. I like them a lot, actually, to keep this game close. They have the athletes to stay close. They're going to play with no risk, no whatever. The pressure's on Alabama to stay in the top 12, and they don't want to lose this game with what happens. They got to probably looking for a shot to play for the SEC title. We'll see what happens. Nussmeier might show up. Remember, big quarterback edge early on in the year with Nussmeier over Simpson. Now it's changed. Now Simpson looks like the much better player. Looks like he's the number one pick in the draft. Maybe we get to see a little pressure against a really good LSU defense that hopefully shows up. So that's my take.
All right, I'm kind of with you on this. The 12.5 would have really been appealing.
Yep.
And obviously, it was to many people because the line got knocked down 3 points, which is 25% of traction going in that direction. Back up to 10, and if we're going to play that game at 10, I'm going to go ahead and take the points with you and LSU because the possibility that they would be demoralized losing their coach seems to have had the opposite effect. Like you say, one thing I noticed through the season, even when they were winning games, Brian Kelly was particularly testy in these post-game press conferences. I can see where it would be annoying. You win the game, and the first few questions from reporters are all negative, saying, "Well, did you think you'd be able to run the ball better against these guys?"
Yeah.
And Kelly would explode and go off on the reporters and go into some kind of Tommy Lasorda like rant. You thought you were watching Nick Saban, who, by the way, I don't know, speculation at least by Shaquille O'Neal, of course, one of the more famous LSU alum, is that Saban might come back and coach LSU. Although I would imagine he'd be in denial on that. But I don't know. He seems to be perfectly comfortable selling insurance and going on ESPN Game Day. But that being said, I think the motivation might be with LSU to say, hey, look, we were being oppressed by this guy. He wasn't necessarily doing the job that was going to be providing us with the motivation that we needed to go out there and play our best football. Here's Alabama, a chance to be a little bit of a spoiler against an arch rival. So maybe your season has been dashed and it's not going to turn out the way that you had anticipated. But here's one game where you have a chance to really go out there as a player and make a statement. I'm thinking maybe that's enough to keep them close in this one. So the 10-point allotment looks pretty generous. Once again, Mike Jones, a very scary situation on Break the Bank where both you and I are in complete and total unison, thinking that LSU will go ahead and overcome all of the negativity that's transpired inside their program with the firing of their coach and general manager and find a way to get motivated enough to keep this game close enough so they'll somehow be within 10. There's always the possibility of the backdoor cover also. So you find yourself in a favorable spot if you're getting 10 points, I believe, with LSU. All right, our other collective game goes to the pros, and this is no easy pickings here. This A.J. Johnson not making it easy for us this week on Break the Bank. Steelers and the Chargers. The
Yeah, it's a
Steelers
great game.
Chargers, tough call because it's always difficult for me to get a gauge on the Chargers. You keep thinking they're going to crack through, and that Herbert's going to establish himself as one of the better quarterbacks in the league, and that doesn't seem to ever take a deep hold. They are winning games. Jim Harbaugh, we know, is a good coach. Mike Tomlin, I think, does as much with less as a lot of coaches in the league have throughout the history of the NFL, but has a tendency to have late season collapses like he did last year. Aaron Rodgers, perhaps motivated. Is this the Sunday night game going to be
It
on
is.
Sunday
Yeah,
night?
it is.
So you
Yep.
know that Rogers, whatever incentive he has to play at the highest levels, probably tweaked up a notch here. What do you see with the Steelers, who are getting 3 points in this game from the
You know,
Chargers?
I saw something that really alarmed me last week, and I know we walked. I think I might have mentioned this to you while we were sitting together watching a game, and I had a really good look at the big TV, had the Steelers and the Colts on, and I had the Giants and 49ers on, so I was really kind of focused on those two games while trying to scan the bar that we were in to see all the games. But I got a good look at it, and it seemed to me that I saw something on Saturday morning where ESPN came out and Teddy Bruschi and Rex Ryan went after the Steeler defense, and what they were saying was right. Patrick Queen was loafing to a couple plays, and if you were Patrick Queen or you're someone that were watching this, and if this was on TV in the Steelers locker room and you saw this, more motivation could be given by someone just pointing out the flaws of what you're doing on the field. And I thought that Pittsburgh put up their best defensive effort. I think they constantly got the pressure on Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones turned into the New York Giant Daniel Jones that I'm more familiar with than the Daniel Jones MVP style that I'm seeing out of the Colts so far this year. And they caused 6 turnovers. The Colts had only turned over 4 times the whole year, and they had 6 in one game. Granted, everybody's saying how, yes, it only ended up being a 7-point game, but that game was pretty much decided a lot earlier on. I just like what the Steelers are doing. They caught a break. Now they have a game and a half lead over the Ravens, or a 2-game lead over the Ravens, and they have 2 games coming up. So they have to keep pace, and they have to keep pace. Now, the Chargers lose their left tackle, Joe Alt, a huge loss. I think he's gone for the year as he hurt an ankle.
Yeah, and their right tackle is questionable also. Bobby
Yeah,
Hurt.
right. And they traded for a new guy. That'll tell you where Jim Harbaugh thinks. So you're a 6-3 team, and you're out of the trade deadline, making the only trade for an offensive lineman to go get a New Orleans Saints offensive lineman to come out there. So they have problems on the offensive line. I think this might be a bad remedy that the Steelers found a pass rush. The Steelers got after Daniel Jones, caused some turnovers, and maybe they get a little bit of confidence. They don't have their back still. I don't think Hampton's coming back. So there's still a couple of players that they're missing, the Chargers. And I think we're going to see a kind of Steelers crowd. I wouldn't be surprised if half the crowd or better is going to be filled with Steeler fans. So it's going to be a kind of boisterous place where I think they get going. Plus the Sunday night game, they were embarrassed 2 weeks ago after having a big lead at halftime and losing at home to Green Bay. I just got a sneaky suspicion, and I'm going to take the points here at Pittsburgh, and I think they kind of really get another good defensive effort like they can, and I think they kind of get the win out there in LA.
I remember when I was covering baseball out in L.A., the California Angels, as they were known at the time, had some really good teams. Gene Autry, the singing cowboy, was emptying his saddlebags as headlines would go to sign all these great free agents. They put together a team with Don Baylor and Rod Carew and Bobby Grich. They had Nolan Ryan and Frank Tanana. And no matter what they did, they were still the ugly, redheaded stepchild of the Los Angeles Dodgers, with their fabled franchise and their great history, which was only enhanced in the last couple of years by winning back-to-back World Series. And you would have to say, and this happened, I don't know if to the same extent when the Raiders briefly played in L.A. I was also out there then. They certainly paled in comparison to the attention that the Rams were getting. The Rams, of course, being the longtime hometown team. But there was interest in the Raiders. They played at the Coliseum. They didn't draw full houses, but the interest was there because they were the Raiders. They had kind of a universal following. The Chargers, far from it. I'm always shocked. This happened to me one time. I used to make announcements on the field at what is now Hard Rock Stadium before the games got started. And then to make my way up into the stands where I was going to sit and watch the game, took a little while through a bunch of tunnels and all kinds of small enclaves that you had to use to get up to the seats from the field. And I'll never forget this. I'm rolling up, and I finally get to a point where you can almost see the field, and the stadium is rocking. It's just absolutely shaking. And I thought, Jesus, I missed a Dolphin score. But they happened to be playing your beloved New York Giants that game, and the Giants scored, and the stadium erupted. And I thought, how could this be where the stadium is dominant? I know New York teams always draw here, and people find ways to get tickets for Jets and Giants games, or at least they did when the Dolphins were more relevant. But I was amazed at the reaction from the away team scoring, and the fans are just overwhelmingly supporting that. You hear this all the time when you
Yeah.
watch a Charger game. When they're playing there at SoFi, my God, it's amazing how the visiting team seems to be the home team no matter
Yeah.
what. So that's a negative. So I think the Steelers would be well represented. Who wouldn't want to be in LA instead of being in Pittsburgh on a November weekend? And then if you're looking at the Chargers, they're only 3-6 against the spread. They have one cover in their last 7. The Steelers are 8 of the last 10 games as underdogs on a Sunday, so they've won those outright. So they're always contentious in those spots. You lose your left tackle and right tackle. That's prohibitive, especially against the Steeler defense. That's
Yep.
pretty good. So I'm thinking a lot of factors pointing in the Steelers' direction in this one, and this is sort of getting silly, Mike. I agree with you. I'm going to take the 3 points of the Steelers. Why did we have these 3 collective games? We could have just
Well, it's
said,
good. I'll bet you
games.
we're going to be against each other. We won't have the same game that we're picking out of freestyle. So,
Oh, the selected games. I have one that relates directly to the trade deadline. But so we're 3 for 3. We're going to go. Although I didn't really care for the side that much in the FAU game. I would favor FAU. You like the side. I like the over.
okay.
LSU, we're both taking the points with LSU, and we're both taking the points with the Steelers. All right, we're going to come back and give you our freelance selections here in a moment. Steve Luker, the great Luke, is producing the show, and we'll come back in a moment with more here on Break the Bank in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Joe B, founder of Joe B's 100% natural free-range bee pollen, and I want you to feel great. $99 gets you a 6-month supply, and this 7th month is absolutely free. The shipping is free. Joe B's is bee pollen, simple natural nutrition loaded with natural vitamins and minerals. There's only one place to get Joe B's, and that's from me, Joe B. What are you waiting for? You will love my Joe B's, and if you don't, then I will gladly refund your money, no questions asked.
Welcome to Rebet, the first of its kind free-to-play social sports book.
Let's put some money on the game tonight.
I can't. I'm broke.
We'll just use the coins.
Coins?
Use Rebet coins for a free and fun betting experience while gaining in-app status. And for the betting enthusiasts, use our sweepstakes model to redeem real money rewards with Rebet Cash.
So New York to cover the spread?
They're minus 10, bro. It's a lock.
For those who might not get the lingo, use our easy-to-read lines to bet like a pro. And for those with a competitive friendship,
Dallas is going to crush Philly tonight.
Man, put your money where your mouth is.
All right, bet.
compete directly against your friends through our peer-to-peer betting feature. Bet on over 60 major sports leagues with Rebet's dynamic social sportsbook, featuring more than 3,000 diverse betting markets for an unparalleled experience. And with our social feed, you can share your bets with your friends. See a pick you like? Double down with a click of a button. This is Rebet. Welcome to sports betting made social. Legal in 47 states.
All right, welcome back to the show. We would never work out on Rebet. We were agreeing on virtually everything here, Mike Jones. So we would have to find some other partners to connect there. But it's an ideal way to make your wagers, and a lot of people really love the format. Don't have to necessarily be flush with cash at the time. It's always good to be able to catch a break in that regard. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those great betting sites that is a nice alternative to some of the other ones. Even if you're signed up with some of the bigger boys, the Rebet right there and offer you many, many golden opportunities to make some money and have some fun with your wagers. All right, free selections coming up. We're going to have a couple of those each, and I'm going to let you start it off. I'm going to let you go ahead and have the honors here. Put that, what are you playing? Strixon right there on the tee. And I know you're going to hit yours down the fairway about 350, but I'm just hoping not to hit a grounder to the green when they get up there from about 90 yards out. But all right, fire away. You're first of your free selection.
You know, there's an interesting game at 12 o'clock in the Big 12 where BYU was heading down to Texas Tech. And last week, I got perplexed. The big game that happened out there was the Cincinnati-Utah game that was late on ESPN. And I kept looking at that line all week, 10.5, 11.5, 9.5, 10.5, 11.5. Like, how was the 24th ranked team a 10-point favorite clearly over the Cincinnati. And I kept trying to figure a way to pull the trigger on Cincinnati. And I kept watching. It was just a different game. Sorby looked completely out of sorts. It was 7-7, a lot of running, a lot of scoring early, 14-7 game. You're thinking, oh boy, how is Utah going to do this? And then all of a sudden the game gets completely away from Cincinnati. And I'm saying, boy, they win 45-14. How did the odds makers put that line up there that completely made me pass? If that line is 6, I'd take Cincinnati all day long. The minute I see 10.5, I'm like, how could you bet Cincinnati in this game? And I heard Portnoy talking about this with the guys that he bets with, and like, this is really weird. He's playing the same thing. Like, the line is telling him, I'm not going to be fooled. He took Cincinnati. But I kept saying to myself as he's describing this same factor and to me that maybe Utah's the side in this game. And it pulled me off it. And I'm telling you, if the line was 7 or 6.5, I probably would have taken Cincinnati. Instead, I passed. Same thing here. And I'm not going to get fooled. I love Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech is a much better team than anything. They're getting healthier on the offensive line, healthier at quarterback. I think this is the first time they're playing home against a tough team all year long. It's the toughest competitor they got. I know BYU's been great. You know, they've got a couple close games that they won, went in Iowa State and pulled a shocker last week, but it's a down Iowa State team. Again, the line 10.5. And I'm like, man, that's high. I thought I was going to get a 3.5 price with this game and be able to like Texas Tech. Well, now, as crazy as it sounds, I like Texas Tech even more laying 10. So I'm going to go with Texas Tech as my first game and think that this is a game, the winner of this game probably gets moved up into the factor that they're probably a secured spot, possibly in the race. But BYU would be undefeated. You know, maybe if they lose a game, they could still get in. Probably a clear path to the Big 10, the Big 12 championship. And Texas Tech needs this game now after the tough loss to Arizona State. Texas Tech is 8-1 against the number. They're 8-1 outright. They've been a great cover all year if you bet them. The line's telling me that you can, as much as I want to, you want to grab that big price. It looks too obvious. BYU, take Texas Tech. It's kind of reading the line there.
I'm going to go with a game here. Both of my games are in the pro ranks, but I'm going to go with a game that you would only use if it was like week 15 of a survivor pool and you were still alive. Because normally I would never take a look at this ball game, but I have every reason to think that I'm going to be on the right side of this one, and that's usually the kiss of death. But that being said, I'm looking at two teams that are god-awful. The Cleveland Browns, 2-6 on the season, 3-5 against the spread. The New York Jets, 1-7 on the season, coming off that thrilling victory that they were able to pull off when they came from the dead and got their first victory of the year for Aaron Glenn. But subsequent to that, they made two moves that make me think that they have no shot to win this ballgame. They're 4-4 against the spread. They are getting a couple of points in this game against the Cleveland Browns, 2 and a hook. And I was surprised that line didn't change because I was looking to see if there was a revised number, especially after the trade deadline passed yesterday. And what do the Jets do? They trade Quinnen Williams, their stud defensive lineman, who's been an established star in the league ever since he came in as a first-round draft pick. And they trade Sauce Gardner. They trade Sauce Gardner to the Colts, Quinnen Williams to the Cowboys. They get draft picks, and a lot of people are applauding the move, saying they were going nowhere this year, and they may as well 2027 draft supposed to be especially rich. And now they find themselves with 5 first-round picks in the next couple of drafts. But the draft picks don't go out there and man a position on the field. And I'm thinking if you have a 1-7 team and you take their 2 best defenders off the roster. Now, Gardner, I don't know about your opinion on Gardner. Had he fallen off enough to convince you that maybe he wasn't as impactful of a player as we originally perceived him to be? Because in his first couple of seasons, he was brilliant.
I look forward to seeing him this week in the morning game against Atlanta. Good to go up against Drake London, a really big size guy. He's a big corner. Should be a very interesting matchup. And from what they're saying, this is a big acquisition to put the Colts over the top. They had struggled. They had some injuries last week at the corner position. Now they get a bona fide all-pro out there, and the price is big. They gave up Mitchell, the receiver, and two number ones. So they must think he's right, and they can make him right. You know, but it's a real big thing when you go from a 1-7 New York media market to a 7-2 team now top. So if you're ever motivated to get out there and play, and a little trip to Germany, let's go do it. So, I mean, I could see what you're saying is that the Jets kind of might have told everybody they're packing it in and now gearing toward a draft position more than anything else. But I think that line did move. I thought the Jets were a 2-point favorite going into yesterday. Now they're a 2.5-point dog. So to me, that's a pretty significant move, but well earned, because I think you give away those 2 players, you're sending a message. And the Jets still got good defense. I mean, they're not as what they were. I thought last year one of the great factors of the Jets was they blew 4 fourth-quarter leads to make Aaron Rodgers look bad. When he left, I thought that might have changed a little perception of how Rodgers played because his numbers were pretty good even late in the season. He threw 28 picks and 28 touchdowns, 11 picks. So I felt like those numbers were pretty sufficient to keep him in New York. But I guess this is the change. So to me, I'm with you. I think I like Cleveland in this spot, and I kind of think that maybe this trade was just a deal that the Jets got to recoup and figure a way to go out.
Yeah, I mean, the statement from the brass there was that, well, we're certainly not throwing in the towel in the season, and maybe they're not. Maybe some of the other players will be motivated, but I'm just looking at some of these teams. The team was weak to begin with, and I think if you pull their two best defensive players, I don't think anybody would argue that. You pull those guys out of the lineup, they're not going to get any better. The Browns have had, I mean, they're not a good team, but are they good enough to beat a 1-7 Jets team that just lost its two big stars? If those guys were injured, you would immediately jump on the Cleveland Browns. They're gone, and they don't have anybody to replace them. So I'm going to go ahead and take the. I thought it would be a bigger spread. The Browns not distinguished enough to be worthy of being more than a 3-point favorite on the road. But I'm going to go ahead and take the Cleveland Browns in the spot, lay the 2.5, and figure that the Jets are in a situation. It's funny, too, because we saw this with the Miami Dolphins a few years ago when Brian Flores was coaching, and they were trading guys and then picking up offensive linemen at the gas station down the street there, which was one of Chris Greer's great strategies that led to his dismissal just last week. But that being said, I don't see how the Jets got any better. It would have been somewhat of a toss-up for me, Browns versus the Jets anyway. So when you pull those two guys out of the lineup and you don't replace them with anybody of significance on the defensive side, I'm probably like a lot of people, and it may come back to haunt me. I may feel like Ed Ogeron on that hot seat where they just put a hot plate right up to his ass before every game when he was coaching at LSU. But I'm thinking the Browns are good enough to prevail in his spot with those two key players out, Williams and Sauce Gardner. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Cleveland Browns as one of my elective selections here on this week's edition of Break the Bank. All right, you have one in the books here. Where else are you going?
I'm taking a deep breath here because I'm going for another big favorite and a road favorite at that. And it was going to be Buffalo, but I'm looking at this Lions-Commanders game. The Commanders lose Jaden Daniels, who I absolutely love, on a freakish injury late in the game after they punted to start the fourth quarter, and listening to the coaches that talk about football around the league, saying that when you punt on the first play of the fourth quarter down 38-7, you're basically packing it in. And then with 7 minutes to go, they run an RPO on the goal line, and obviously Daniel's doing everything he can to score a touchdown, the competitor he is, and he gets caught in a bad position, and he dislocates his elbow. And now you lost him for the season. It clearly affected the team. You could clearly see the emotion on the sidelines, with the players taking a knee on both sides, that these injuries just become more and more devastating. And then you start to think, boy, is this going to change the way you want to bet these games in second halves, and maybe big favorites can hang in there because teams are going to pack it in and might not play their starters risking injury or what happens there. So maybe laying the wood is going to be a bad thing moving forward this year, just for the shock value of, hey, I don't want to lose a good player when you're stuck a little bit. So here's my thought on the Detroit. Detroit loses a really tough game to an in-division rival. First time the Vikings win a game as a 9.5-point underdog in over a decade. And it's in a division game. And we're watching that game and we're thinking, oh, Detroit's going to kill them. It's a big Survivor game. And you and I are talking about it. I picked Detroit last week. And I'm sitting there thinking, normally you get mad at that. I'm never going to pick the Lions again. They did it to me again. But I just look at this game like, who ruined their season last year? It was Washington. Washington went in there and pounded them. And, when everybody loved the Lions to get to the Super Bowl. So I think that's going to be there. I like watching Dan Campbell off a loss. We lost to Kansas City a few weeks ago, came out and destroyed Tampa on a Monday night game that was a small line. The line just dropped from 9 to 8, which surprises me. It means some smart money came in. They lose Luke McCaffrey. They lose Lattimore. Watching that McCaffrey play in the first part of the game, I thought, wow, that's a really bad injury. He broke his collarbone after the year. Looked like he had a big piece of being a second wide receiver with McLaurin out. Got to look at the injuries, and I just don't know when you come off a great season of a championship game. You play in the championship game if you're Washington, and now you're 3-6, and now you see the season's going away. You have a veteran team. It's a different game today. Do they worry about the brand, the health, and all that? I think Detroit rights the ship, and I think Detroit wins this game big. I'll lay the 8.
Yeah, I like the way they bounced back after that loss, and they ended up putting it on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who everybody was thinking Super Bowl possibilities, and they may still well have those, but they certainly didn't look good in that spot. I'm going to go back to a standard theory that I've had all season long, and that is that the Saints absolutely suck. They made a change at quarterback. They got rid of Spencer Ratliff. That experiment failed and failed miserably. This guy they brought in, how do you say his name? Is it Slough or Slow?
Shaw, Tyler Shaw.
Schaff. Okay, yeah. Anyway, he looks like a Slough, or he just he provided a little bit of a spark, I guess, for the Saints' offense last week. But Carolina's been one of the surprise teams in the league to the extent that their over/under total for the season was predicted at 6.5, and you would have been inclined to say take the under on that. No, before the season started, what reason was there to believe that Carolina was going to show any kind of distinct improvement? But they have. The way they handled the Dolphins in that ball game, I thought was impressive. They came back and won again the subsequent week, sitting there at 5-4 overall. I saw that line was 5.5 the other day, but it may be down to 4.5. Mike Jones, I don't know if you have the lines in front of you, the current ones, but I'm looking at yesterday's news tomorrow here. But
5.5. So I saw 4.5. I see it go up to 5.5. I've seen it
5.5 again. Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Carolina's demonstrated that they're maybe not the patsies that they appeared to be before the season got started. I like their coach a lot. I don't know about Bryce Young. I mean, he looks like he's ready to break in half anytime that you see him. He doesn't seem to have the kind of a prototypical size that you would look for in a quarterback. He's more slight than even Tua Tagovailoa with the Miami Dolphins. And yet, that being said, they're playing a decent brand of football, seem to be inspired. I'm going to go ahead and say that because not so much what Carolina's doing, which has been impressive compared to expectations, but I just think the Saints also traded a couple of guys at the trade deadline. They weren't blockbuster deals. They got back like fifth and fourth round picks, I think, for a couple of players. One was a speedy wide receiver. I don't think they put themselves any on their current roster by what they did at the trade deadline. They dealt another guy, I believe, an offensive lineman.
Yep.
So it's another one of those compromise situations at the deadline. I don't think that's a forebearer for good things to come in the ensuing week. And so it's not like they got rid of some disgruntled player or somebody that was causing a lot of problems in the locker room. They got rid of two guys that they desperately needed. And so I'm going to go ahead and lay the 5.5, even if that's the number, with the Carolina Panthers to go ahead and move, surprisingly, to 6-4. That's the shocker. While our hometown team, the Miami Dolphins, are more than likely to be 2-8 after this week's game against the Bills. The Carolina Panthers being 6-4, I think would be as surprising as what the Colts are doing and the Patriots.
Yeah, last week's game when we were sitting there watching it, you could see that the Green Bay was just struggling at certain times moving the ball, and they gave up a lot in the running game. And one of the great stats I heard from a guy handicapper was that the Green Bay, Carolina allows the least amount of offensive plays to their opponent, which I always think this is a really interesting stat that I think should get more. People should be more aware of it. I've always thought that you keep your defense off the field is a sign of success. And I would watch that stat later on. Who plays the least amount of plays on the field? So instead of playing fast, you play slow to move clock, keep games close, and save your defense. And I think that be Rico Dowdell's emergence and them being able to run the ball.
Breakthrough season, sure. Yep. Yeah. All right, so there you have it again. We have our free selections. We were in mutual accord on all three of the mandatory plays there that were given to us by the great A.J. Johnson. We have to thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. We'll have Frankie G. He says he's going to be with us the rest of the season. Did he have to sell his plane ticket to make up for the losses at the Breeders' Cup? What do you think?
No.
It's like driving over to
or he did so well, he's staying out there having fun.
I tell you what, that's a tough place to leave. I haven't been out to Del Mar a couple of years ago, and of course lived in California for a while. But wow, well, what a beautiful spot that is! And next year we're going to have to go. We'll make plans to go to the Breeders' Cup because it's at my favorite place, which is Racing Nirvana there at Keeneland Racecourse. We'll have to get A.J. Johnson, get us some credentials, and we'll do some shows there from the Breeders' Cup. So that'll be a lot of fun. So we're envious of Frankie G. We're sorry he wasn't able to make it this week, but hopefully you guys have some plays that you can have some success with. For Mike Jones, my good friend Mike Jones, I'm Jeff DeForest. And for Steve Luke, thanks for producing another gem here. We'll see you guys next week on the next edition of Break the Bank.